Two, one. Hi, everybody, and welcome to episode one of the Weathered and Forged podcast. I am your co-host, Sawyer Landry, and with me today is somebody I'd say, pretty close to. My dad, Landon Landry.
Hello. Is it windy down there? It's windy up here, man.
Dude, it's been cloudy here today. I'm not liking it. Moved down
Same
here for
here.
yeah,
Yeah,
moved
you
down here
can't.
for the sunshine.
Yeah, you can't throw the swimming pool. I know. So,
That's ridiculous.
yeah, good,
So
man.
I thought we'd just kind of start off, and for the people who don't know what you do or what Weathered and Forged is, kind of just tell them who you are and how we got to doing a podcast and all this stuff.
Yeah. So Weather and Forge, we actually started this, kind of launched it back over the summer. um, I've been traveling around and speaking at some different places, different entities over the past year and a half or so. Speaking at recovery meetings and recovery conferences, men's conferences, church meetings. Have been to schools and talked to students and talked to teaching staffs, talked to work groups, just different people about life and my life's experiences and kind of what I've learned out of it. And it's kind of born out of, you heard the word recovery a minute ago. I went through some recovery, about three and a half years ago. I had a pornography addiction I did not know I had for the better part of 20 years until it was almost too late. And 3.5 years ago, it blew up where everybody in the world knew about it. And we can talk more about that later. But out of that, I went into recovery for it and learned a lot about life, learned a lot about my relationship with my higher power and God, and then just learned how to work with people through that. Going through that process too was really instrumental in shaping what I do. But during that point too, over the past 3.5 years, I've been asked to work with guys from all over the U.S. about different problems, whether it's marriage problems or alcoholism or whatever. For whatever reason, my stories resonated with them, and I'm able to help through that. Also, have gotten off big on talking about mental health from 2022 to 2023, and pretty much a calendar year. I had four really good friends of mine commit suicide, ages 37 to 55. All men. That's become a pandemic too. Suicide rate in the U.S. is basically 4-to-1, men to women, and growing every day. So out of that, this whole mental health deal has come out and been important to me. Also since the pandemic, I don't think the pandemic created it. I think it just exposed it. And then, we spent some time. We talk to anybody that will listen about screen addictions and pornography with your phones and all that stuff, whether it's porn, whether it's social media, whether it's internet news, whatever. There's some process addictions out there that your brain chemicals through dopamine and other things get you addicted to this stuff, and that's what they want you to do. All these applications do. So we spend time talking to students and parents and whoever will listen to us about that. So the podcast came about, like I said, we launched Weathered and Forged. We'd already kind of been doing some stuff. We launched it back during the summer. We've had a fall of pretty good set of talks and everything. And then, you came to me about doing a podcast just on mental health and maybe men's issues, but where women could listen to it as well. But talking about mental health and mental health issues and maybe addictions. I don't know. We'll see where this goes down the road. We're also working on another one with a buddy of mine, Trevor Johnson. He's like my fourth son. Just talking to different people about their struggles in life and how they got through it and who was there for them and how they carry that torch forward. That one's coming a little bit later on in the year, maybe even early next year. But yeah, that's how we got here with this. You called me one day and said, I want to get involved with this. I want to help. I think this would be good. So here we are. So that's kind of the background, the nickel and dime 30,000 foot deal. We can get into a lot more details as we go through this, but yeah, here we are, and now we're doing this stuff. So here,
Yeah,
yeah, that's it. So
yeah, no, I remember calling you and just being like, "Hey, I know, you've been talking about wanting to do stuff like this for a while, and with the running your social media accounts and everything, I just felt like we're not getting the message out as much as we could from, something like this is just so conversational by nature that, people tune in and they listen, and if it can help them, it helps them. Just sometimes just hearing that, hey, other people are going through this stuff too is, some of the biggest things that can, push you to be like, okay, maybe I'm not as screwed up as I think I am, and screwed up isn't even the word I'd use. I mean, the suicide rates in this country after COVID, men and women combined are, exponentially higher just because of the isolation and everything that people have dealt with for, the fallout of that. So the thing I wanted to, kind of touch on is, we kind of gave the backstory of how Weathered and Forged came about, but what kind of pushed you? I know you kind of talked about your addictions and the stuff you went through. What was the point where you decided, hey, I think I might actually want to like use this to help other people?
yeah, well, it's a well, that's a story within itself. I'll tell you this, and I believe this, and people that will, and I hope we have people of all beliefs watch this podcast. So my belief is mine, and I'm Christian. That's what I do, and that's what I am. But I hope people will hear this. But you know, from the minute my world came crashing down, I just felt like God was telling me, "Look, dude, you're not the only one, and this is a big deal. And one of these days, you're going to have to share the story." I didn't know what that meant. I really didn't. But what got me to this point was, about a year into my recovery, I had some people start calling me, some old pastor friends and people like that, going, "Hey, man, we've been watching you, and we know you're doing well. Would you be willing to help whoever?" They had friends that were going through some hard things, so. I started stepping them through some 12-step work and life recovery journey work, which is what I used. And just the more I was around it, and especially in the first year, I learned real quick. When my world came crashing down, I thought I was the only one that had problems. And it became apparent really quick that I was not the only one. In fact, I was just one of the masses. And that's what I started learning was, this is everybody out here. And, maybe it's not pornography, but there's dudes with drinking issues. There's dudes that have relationship issues. There's guys that have extreme confidence issues in themselves. And all of this just started adding up and saw for whatever reason. And mine was really public, and we can talk about all that in a little bit. But mine was so public, it was out there that I guess that's why it resonated because people felt like they were comfortable coming and talking to me because mine was already done. The damage was done. And just out of that, I think guys felt comfortable talking to me. And I guess it just resonated because, like you said a minute ago, I think the reason it did is because it's an everyman deal. I think what people see as things happen to me was, well, it could have happened to me too, or I've had similar things happen. Maybe not exact, but I'm going through some things, and that's what kind of got me going. And as I started helping people and seeing that it mattered, uh, that got me interested. And then, when I started losing friends in 2022 and 2023, I was just like, man, I can't keep my mouth shut any longer. We've got to get this out there. It's too important. There's too many lives at risk, and there's too many people hurting over this. That's part of my story too. During all my struggles over the years, I can count 4 times that I almost got up and left you guys in the middle of the night. I know I shared that with you. And I was going to where nobody could ever find me again. Not you guys, not my parents, not anybody. And the only thing that kept me home was my three boys, and just going, man, they'll never talk to me again. They won't understand. And that was, and also, well, what am I teaching them? That when problems get that big, you just run, right? What I noticed is, and what I started learning was, as I started stepping through my friend's suicides, was I was doing the same thing. I was just doing it a different way. And that's when I started looking around and seeing, especially men, but so many people just checking out in life. They just check out. They're just done. And it doesn't have to be that way, because we get to feeling like we're the only ones. And that's what got me started on this. And then, I had one person call, ask me to speak at a function, and then a week or two later, a month later, a school asked, and another school, and then it kind of blossomed from there. So now that's where we are today with it. We can talk about that later too. There's several different things we can talk about through Weathered and Forged as well. So
Yeah, and I think, the oversight and the overcloud of that is all center focused around mental health because, if your head ain't right, there's nothing you can really do to get yourself out of it. I mean, I've been, after I moved down here, I'm 7 hours away from anybody that I even know, and I mean, that was one of the biggest things for me was having to be like, I would have these thoughts of like, oh, this is terrible. Oh, this is awful. Like, I am so alone. Like, well, this is going to happen. And then, I'm not doing this and I'm not doing that. And then, you just have to take a second to breathe and be like, hey, none of this stuff has happened. And I'm making it up in my head of like, this is reality when in fact it's just something. I love the quote that I see all the time that says, your anxiety lies to you 24/7. That's what it does. That's what you know, its genetic makeup is to make you freak out and worry about stuff that maybe won't even happen. And
yeah,
so it's,
and you're already getting into episode 2, which is what we're going to talk
yeah,
about: anxiety and worry. Yeah, you're right.
exactly.
Yeah.
It's just a, a slippery slope for that. But so yeah, I mean that's kind of how you got to where you are today. So for people who don't for people who don't know, and for people who are maybe this is the first time they heard about Weathered and Forged and everything, what was, you talk about your addiction you didn't know you had and stuff like that. What was I mean, you and I both know, what was the crashing point of,
Yeah.
oh, like
Yeah.
this is a problem, and oh, it's got to change
Yeah.
today.
Yeah. So, 23 years ago, right after you were born, we were just having issues at home and work and family and everything. And I was coaching at the time, and we were in football season. As a joke, I had a buddy of mine. We always traded game film on Sundays to scout our next opponent. Well, back then it was on VHS. And he left me a game film one Sunday, and except it wasn't a game film, it was a porn flick. And it was a joke and it was funny at the time, but I can look back and remember my brain clicking. There was something in my brain that clicked, and it wasn't about what I was seeing. It was just, for whatever reason, it happened. And that was the initial start for me with the pornography. Was it was taking me out of reality. It was just something to get me away. So some people use alcohol, some people use drugs. I mean, everybody uses something. A lot of people use social media now. They make their family look like the best ever out there. I mean, that's an addiction. We can all get to that later down the road. But mine started there, and I fought it hard for about, oh man, 15 years or so. It was in and out, because back then we didn't have these, or it didn't have the capability to get on everything we had back then. So, it'd be in and out of my life. I could do without it for 6 months or a year, but anytime big stress came up, the porn showed back up. It was just a release. I was able to battle it off for a while, but it's somewhere around 2016 to 2018. I've tried to think when the exact moment was, and I can't remember. There was a lot of stress in their life going on. We'd lost some family. Things weren't going well at work. I mean, there was a lot of things happening again, and I found it on here. And when I found it on my phone, that was the tipping point, because at that point I could get porn on my phone any minute, anytime, anywhere, and nobody would ever know. And I got hooked and hooked hard. By 2019, I knew I had a problem. I didn't know how to fix it. The pandemic happened in 2020. That subsided because there wasn't anywhere to go. I didn't have to worry about it so much. When I got back on the road with work in 2021, it was in full effect again. And in August of 2021, I got caught in a solicitation sting in Amarillo. And people go, well, how do you go from watching porn to that happening? Well, the porn addiction, there's three stages. You watch and act, and then you watch and act out. And you hear about people finding old boyfriends or girlfriends from high school and college on social media, and they meet up again and they ruin their lives. And it's all a process with this, because at some point you get to where you start seeking out. And man, the pop-up world with screens and algorithms, they just start throwing stuff at you. And that's where I got. And at the time that happened for me, it became public. I grew up in this area. I'm from this area. I coached here. I'm in management in the company. It was pretty well known through management, not in financial services world. I was on our school board locally. I was on our church board. I mean, everybody I ever knew in my life knew it was happening, because those stings back then, they were a big deal. They put them on the evening news. I remember the first night we saw that. That was a good time. It was on the evening news. It was on Facebook. Our editor here in town put it in the newspaper. I mean, it was everywhere. There wasn't anyone that knew me that didn't know what happened and didn't know what my problem was. And it was at that point, which I call it rock bottom, and a lot of people have to get there. I went, man, something's got to change. And I knew I had a problem. I just didn't know how to fix it. And I certainly wasn't going to tell anybody, because I was afraid everybody was going to judge me. So it was at that point I went, okay, it's either run away finally. And I thought about it. I gave thought to it, but I had enough people gather up behind me and go, no, you're not going to do that. That I sought out and got some help, and moved on from there. And, the rest is history. Here I am. So.
You know, no, yeah. I mean, it's a hard, it's a hard thing to deal with. And I mean, I'm sure it's an even harder thing to deal with, by yourself, especially with something like that, because it's a very, shameful thing to be like, you're already doing this in secret and everything. And if you step out and, you know, tell somebody, like, there's the fear of the first thing they're going to do is judge me. And the first thing they're going to do is going to be, negative or, stuff like that. So, I mean, the fear that comes with that is, something that I think people overlook a lot, especially like is in that case specifically, and then in mental health as a whole. I mean, I think people don't reach out for help because they're afraid of being judged, of being
Oh,
categorized as somebody with a problem. And it's the same thing of like I know you go to therapy, I go to therapy. It's the same thing of saying I go to therapy. The stigma around that for years was, oh God, like, God bless
you
them if
must be
they're
really
going to
screwed up if
therapy.
you're doing that. Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, just throw them in a psych ward for that price. But yeah. So you talked about 2019. From then on, was there any time that you did reach out to anybody, or did you fight this solely by yourself for that time?
Fought it by myself for 20 years. In fact, my counselor and therapist, we were going through the 12 steps. And in a lot of ways, you think it's just Alcoholics Anonymous, but it's not. And I'll just stop and tell anybody, if you want to clean your life out, whatever it is, go through the 12 steps. It is not just designed for alcoholics. If you want to get right in life, that'll do it. And we got to, it was like step 3, or I don't remember. And my counselor said, he's talking about enablers in my life. And, well, who enabled you? Who were the people that helped you through this? And I said, nobody. And then he's been a counselor for 20 years. And he looked at me and goes, what do you mean nobody? He's a Christian counselor, so he wasn't really cussing at me at the time. He's like, what do you mean nobody? I said, Nobody ever knew. He said, so for 20 years, you hid this. I said, yeah. And he just sat back and he said, I know you're going through a lot right now with life and all this. He goes, but how relieved are you? And I said, man, I feel like a 300-pound anvil has been lifted off my chest. And even the day I got arrested, in that moment when I finally got a chance to, it was the most, I know this sounds crazy. I'm in a holding cell in Potter County in Amarillo, Texas, with 50 other morons that did that day. I mean, literally 50. And I'm sitting there, and it was like for the first time in 20 years, I had the weight of the world lifted off my chest because no one ever knew. Uh, about 2 months prior, I had looked at getting some stuff on my phone that you and I use now that keeps you from getting on that and you report it and everything. But I had to have an accountability pointer, and I thought, well, who the hell am I going to tell? I mean, without them going, what the crap are you doing? Who am I going to tell? So even at that point, even though I knew I needed help and I wanted help, I didn't know where to go because I just thought, and that's a problem with any addiction is you isolate. You get to thinking I'm the only one with a problem. No one else is going to understand it. It's the exact opposite. There's so many of us. Well, it's the whole world's out there fighting it. Just porn, for example, 80% of men nowadays say they struggle with it. 80%. Not just they watch it. 80% of men say, yeah, I struggle with it. 60% of women say they do. 60% of your pastors say that they have had a problem with it over the years. Average age of first exposure is 10 years old. By the time they're 14, almost every kid's seen it by the time they're 14. So it's a widespread deal. But that was mine and I kept it hid. And like my counselor, he was like, how are you even alive? And I said, I really don't know. And even at that point, it's like, hell, I can't tell you. I'm just here.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like a cockroach. You can't kill me, I guess. I don't know. Yeah. So
Yeah, I mean, I imagine that's got to be, in a weird way, the biggest relief. I mean, keeping something like that to yourself 20 years without anybody knowing about it is got to be, just. I mean, I can't imagine. I mean, that's so like just.
no, I had a friend of ours, and him, and I'm not going to say who it was. They were using a little bit of Christianity on me about, well, you're leading this double life and everything. I was like, dude, it's not a double life. It's been the biggest secret ever. What do you mean double life? I mean, crap. Yeah. Call it what you want. I mean,
Yeah.
it's a whole complete, it's not even a double life. And that's what I tell people. It was not even a double. It was like this guy over here and then this normal guy I've known my whole life. And it was like an out of body experience with those guys. I mean, it was crazy. So yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that's a hard battle to fight. And I mean, it's even harder when you're, going in alone of just,
Oh man, my,
having to.
my level of insanity, you have no idea. I don't know how I held it together around my family and my friends and stuff. And I don't know that I did. I think in the end, I've had some friends that went, man, we knew something was going on in the end. So I was getting ready. I was beginning to crack. But
Mhm.
geez, man, it was insaneness in my mind running 100 miles an hour every minute of every day.
Well, I
Every
was about to say, I mean, I'm sure, for a good 3 or 4 years, I mean, it was probably just you were on autopilot. I mean, it's just you were just kind of coasting and
yeah,
not even realizing.
yeah, so I call it survival mode. Danita, your mom and I, we've talked about survival mode, and I talk about survival mode to people when I speak. But I can remember driving down the road with this, and I'm scanning and I'm going through it right as I'm driving 80 miles an hour and going, that's a good idea, and then going, what the heck am I doing? I can remember throwing it in the back seat of my car, driving, and 10 minutes later it would be in my hand, and I didn't know how it got there going 80 miles an hour. Now that's addiction. It's crazy. It's insane.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, that's not even a double life. That's just
no,
it's almost
it's
a
just
black,
it's
I
just the
mean,
way it was. Yeah,
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 that's just a complete, I mean, yeah, it's like a Jekyll and Hyde type of thing of like a split personality, not even a split personality, but just like, how does this keep happening? Like, I'm not even consciously like doing this. It's just happening, you know.
I literally saw probably for sure the last year, but especially, I don't know. There was a while I really thought, am I just crazy? Do I need to go check myself into the pavilion or something? I mean, I was, because I feel like I'm a pretty smart guy. I've been in the financial services world, had my own business, coaching wise. We had some success, and I'm a smart guy, and I can't shake this. I mean, I'm crazy. I'm losing it. And what I didn't know is just brain chemicals. And that's what people don't understand. All this process addiction stuff, whether it's porn or social media or whatever it is, those brain chemicals basically act like heroin in your brain, and over time, you can look at a process addiction like a porn addict or like a social media or whatever versus a heroin addict's brain, and they look alike.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the good news is heroin, it does damage you can't ever fix. This one over here, it's naturally occurring. It takes some time, but you can fix what your brain chemicals have done to you. So I was lucky on that end. So
Yeah. I mean, I would say that addictions don't trying to think of the right word. They don't pick and choose based on your,
they don't
IQ or
discriminate.
anything
No,
like.
no.
I would venture to guess, and I would actually argue that probably the smarter you are, the probably harder it is for you to break, because you have this false reality of like, well, I'm smart, like I'll figure it out, like
Can
it's not,
handle it. Yeah.
yeah, it's gonna be fine. And then 10, 15 years later, you're like, man, I never kicked this, and it's still bad, and it's probably worse than it ever was.
So I'll tell you, on my counselor, he has told me since the pandemic, he works strictly with men. He has not had an intake that doesn't list pornography as a problem on an
Yeah.
intake. It's that prevalent, and it's so on the porn end, what I tell people is, look, it's not the little old man sitting in the basement in the corner in the room on computers. I mean, I've worked with school superintendents, bank presidents, very successful salesmen, coaches, you name it. It's that, and that's what I see too. I think as you get closer to middle age and you get into your life where you're having some success, and I see it too. I worry about athletes and people that are in competitive businesses, sales, because it's always that adrenaline rush, right? Well,
Mm-hmm.
that's what alcohol and all this other stuff. It just feeds the fire, And I say that it feeds the fire in some aspects, but then it takes you completely out of that life where you can just go, okay, yeah, I don't have to worry about it for a while. I'll deal with it tomorrow. And so it really worries me that, as I watch athletes and I watch guys in sales and, all that stuff. But yeah, it does not discriminate. In fact, I will tell you 90%, no, 99% of the guys I have worked with over 2.5 years, they're all professionals. They're all successful. They've all done well. There is not one that is homeless on the street corner that goes, I lost it all. They're not those guys. They're among you, and they're people in our community that we all look up to. It's just we all got stuff, man. I mean, you're right. It does not discriminate. So
Yeah, it's just yeah, it's a rough deal, dude. And I mean, especially fighting that stuff off by yourself or feeling like you got nobody. It's
yeah,
just especially after COVID. I'm not surprised that a big spike in that went up after COVID, after people were isolated for so long, and then you're able to reinstigate back into society, and it's like, well, I've been doing this consistently for a good span of a year, so like,
yeah,
I mean, how am I ever going to break this?
yeah,
You know,
yeah.
but
And it's stuff we can definitely talk about down the road here. I know I just saw we got about 9 or 10 minutes left, and we could go for hours on this.
yeah,
But yeah, it is and that's part of the reason why you and I wanted to put this podcast out, is because we all got it,
yeah,
some form or fashion. Nobody's got it all figured out. No one's got it perfect, and that's what I want people to know. I'm not sitting here trying to tell you I got it licked and got it beat. With whatever it is, it's a struggle every day. I mean, it's life. So there's none of this. as we talk, it's not going to be this, oh, well, we got it figured out. Listen to us. No, I mean, this is real world. How's it affect your life? How do I go through life figuring this crap out?
Right. So before Zoom kicks us off here, real quick, just a real brief statement. What is the top thing that you would want a first time listener or first time viewer to take away from Weathered and Forged or get out of the Weathered and Forged podcast,
Yeah.
program, all of it?
Yeah. We all got issues. None of us are too far. If you're still alive and the same sun came up today, you still got a chance. It's an opportunity. It's not an obstacle. You're not alone. And we got to be there for somebody. People can't battle this stuff alone. We got to be there for each other. And we just need to be able to talk about it, get it out in the light. I mean, that's the hardest thing is people are going to judge me. You know what? They're the ones that judge you. They've already judged you anyway. It doesn't matter what you tell them. They're going to judge you anyway. So you might as well get it out and get help. But that's my deal is we're all there. We all got issues. Let's just talk about them. Let's talk about them and how can we get better and flip this stuff like the internet that we're using this on and there. Flip it from being used for the worst to how can we use this for good? How can we actually get something good out of this and help each other? You're not by yourself. And that's my biggest deal. You're never too far gone. If the sun came up today, you got a chance and you can't do it by yourself. And that's why we're doing the podcast. We can't do this by ourselves. It's we, not me, for sure. So
Absolutely. Yeah, I love that. Well, I think this was a great first episode. Thank you to everybody for tuning in. People that have viewed the website and everything. We're looking at pushing these out once a week, kind of talking about different topics and everything. And if you want to get in contact with us or email us your story or questions or anything you have, you can reach us at weatheredandforged@gmail.com. And we will see you on the next one.
Yeah, real quick, websites www.weatheredandforged.com, and then we're on social media, same thing, Instagram and Facebook, Weathered and Forged. So
yeah, and I'll link all those in the description below. But thank you guys. Thanks for listening in, and have a great week.
Hey, see you next week.
Hey guys, it's Sawyer. I wanted to hop on here and talk to you legally for a second. This podcast is designed for entertainment purposes only and should not substitute the advice or diagnosis of a legal professional such as a doctor, therapist, or counselor. If you or someone you know is suffering from suicidal thoughts or actions, reach out to the crisis hotline at 1-800-273-8255. Again, that's 1-800-273-8255. Love you guys, and as always, be there for somebody.